Your fonts communicate for you. So, what impression are they leaving for your business or your personal brand? Today, I want to talk about my top 3 tips for picking the best fonts for you. We're going to be talking about the psychology of fonts and the best fonts for different scenarios, plus more. So, grab your cup of tea and let's dive into it. Steve Jobs famously dropped out of Reed College, but for a period of time, he continued to attend classes that he was just interested in, and one of those was calligraphy. He loved it, but he couldn't see any practical application for it in his work at the time. That was up until about 10 years later, when what he learned in that class helped to underpin the beautiful Mac design that we now know. Your fonts play a crucial role for your business or your personal brand. They help to convey your brand values and your brand personality. Research has shown that some people will make judgments about a brand's personality traits based on fonts alone. So this includes things like its warmth, its competence, or its creativity. With programs like Canva now making design so accessible to everyone, it means that people can now create entire brand identities for their business or their personal brand. But before we get a little too design happy, it is worth remembering that graphic design is an art, as is typography. So let's dive into my first tip. Tip number 1 is to find your font personality. I'm going to talk through some of the most popular font types and the best scenario in which they would be used. Let's start with a classic and a serif font. These are the fonts that have the little tail-like looking things on them. So things like your Times New Roman or your Ditto, for example. They're really known for having a more traditional feel. They convey a sense of reliability and respectability and traditional values in general. So some of the brands that you might think of in this space that use fonts like this are going to be brands like Gucci, Vogue, New York Times, for example. It's worth also remembering that these fonts are generally going to be better for physically printed things. So that's why they're so popular in books, for example. The next font that you might choose to use is a sans serif font. These are fonts that don't have those little tails on them. So fonts like Arial and Helvetica, for example, they convey a more modern feel. They have a simplicity and a clean aesthetic about them. They're often going to be the go-to for tech companies. So you'll see this used for brands like Google, Microsoft, and Apple. It appears to be more innovative and more future focused than your more traditional serif style fonts. They're also generally fonts that are easier to use on screens, which is why you will see them be so popular across websites, for example. The next font that you might choose to use is a script font. These are fonts that are going to add a little bit more personality to your brand. They are often nice for adding a personal touch and a hint of creativity to your communications. So you might often see them used on things like personal invitations or anything where you are trying to add a little bit more of an artistic flair to an otherwise quite simple communication. The next font that you might choose to use might be a quirky font. This is a font that is going to be more unconventional compared to its alternatives. This font is going to help you to stand out and be more creatively conveyed in the marketplace. But it is worth remembering that what you gain in standing out, you will potentially lose in a sense of timelessness for that font. So you'll have to understand that that font may potentially not age so well into the future. It also could potentially be a little bit more polarizing for your audience. So you might start to niche down into a much more specific personality type, which could be what you are going for your business or your personal brand. But it's something to keep in mind when it comes to using a more quirky font. When you think about your font styles, you may also choose a angular font. This is going to be a font that conveys stronger emotions, like Rockwell, for example. It will more strongly convey a sense of happiness or a sense of anger, depending what the emotion is that you are trying to communicate. You may also, though, consider more rounded edges, like Comic Sans, for example, and it has a much more gentle and friendliness feel about it compared to its angular counterpart. When you are thinking about what fonts are going to be best for you, you want to also consider the weight of the font. A bold font, for example, can speak volumes. The thicker strokes have a stronger presence and exude confidence and authority. This is why they are commonly used to grab attention through headlines, for example. They convey a sense of importance. But then you can compare that to lighter fonts, and lighter, thinner fonts suggest more elegance and more sophistication. This is why they're often used across luxury brands and more artistic style portfolios. Tip number 2 is to choose your colors carefully. Your choice of font colors is going to speak volumes for your business or your personal brand. So understand what they are communicating for you. Over time, humans have been conditioned to attribute certain meanings to certain colors. For example, it is the reason why we see the color of red being a color that symbolizes passion and energy. If you want to learn more about the psychology of different colors, then check out my other episode on this. I go into much more detail about the different colors and how you can use the color wheel to make sure that you are picking colors that are aesthetically pleasing. These are colors that are pleasing to the human eye because of where they are positioned on the color wheel. When you are working through your color harmonies, it's important to remember that contrast is key. So if you are using fonts that incorporate colors, understand how that is going to be used in different executions. So what is the background that it is most likely going to appear on? For example, if you have a very light gray on a white background, this is going to reduce the readability of that communication. You want to make sure that when you are designing fonts for particular backgrounds, that you are creating as much contrast as possible. This is going to really make the fonts and your words pop on the page or on the screen. It's also going to make it easier for people who have sight issues as well. When the contrast is as optimized as it can be, it's going to help to improve the readability for everyone. Tip number 3 is to keep the classics your default. When you are designing your brand identity for your business or your personal brand, it is easy to get overwhelmed by the amount of choice that you now have available to you. But by sticking to the classics, you reduce your decision fatigue, but you also default to the fonts that have been tried and tested for decades as being some of the most effective options. The legendary designer Massimo Vignelli in the early 90s already said, "In the computer age, the proliferation of typefaces and type manipulations represents a new level of visual pollution threatening our culture. Out of thousands of typefaces, all we need are a few basic ones and trash the rest." Vignelli famously suggested that there are only 6 types of fonts that you will ever need because they will cover all design purposes. So let's have a look at what those are. The first was Helvetica, the sans serif font that is known for its clean, modern, and versatile appearance. Another font that he suggested was Bodoni, and this is a classic serif typeface, and it's known for its elegance and its contrast. The other font that he suggested was the very popular Times New Roman, and this is known for its classic serif typeface and its readability, which is why it is so common across so many different industries. He also suggested Century Expanded, which is a serif typeface with a classic and timeless appearance. Another font that he suggested was Futura, which is a more geometric sans serif typeface, and it's known for its modern and geometric shapes. finally, he also suggested a Garraman font. This is a classic serif typeface known for its readability and its elegance. So because of the versatility, the readability, and the timelessness of these fonts, these were the fonts that Vignelli thought could be able to cover all future design purposes. Remember, when it comes to picking your fonts for your business or your personal brand, don't allow the pursuit of perfection to become your reason for procrastination. By sticking to the classics, you allow yourself to be able to default to things that you know are going to work because they have worked for so many brands already. And then you can move on to other planning for your business and your personal brand. Thanks so much. Subscribe for more like this, and I'll see you in the next episode.